Hey there, and welcome back to B2B Brew, powered by Oracle. I'm your host, Joe Escobedo. Joining me first off is Ravish Chaubey, who is a director of digital marketing at Ola. Also joining us is Ratnesh Mehra, who is a customer experience strategy transformation leader India at Oracle. So first, Ravish, I want to hear from you. I want to set some context in terms of what are some of the biggest challenges that peers in your industry are trying to overcome this quarter.
Yeah, and this is a challenging quarter for everyone. Let me start by calling out the elephant in the room, and which is the pandemic which is going on. So, when I try to define my peers or my industry, it's at two levels. One is the whole electric vehicles or auto sector, and due to pandemic, first and the biggest hit we are seeing is in terms of demand because, of course, with this people staying indoors, not much movement, we are seeing a bit of drop in demand or the excitement which usually is around auto launches. Second, which is also, if you are reading about it, there is a huge crunch of chips, and this whole pandemic is also the supply chain. So from both from demand and supply side, we are seeing a lot of challenges in terms of business. Apart from that, but then we have also seen some of the new things which have emerged like, in the industry and how people are trying to address these. One is that I've seen a lot of adoption of digital technologies, and both in terms of marketing, reaching out to customers, building that engagement with them, basically trying to convert them online. Also, technologies are emerging with which people are trying to give the showroom like experience or physical store experience at home, like AR and VR. And auto industry, especially the legacy auto players, have been a bit of a laggard in that area. But now we are seeing a very widespread adoption of these technologies. So that's something good which has emerged out of it. From apart from this, if I look at my peers in digital marketing, where people are struggling a bit is basically in terms of conversion and sales, because with the ongoing pandemic, there is always a tendency to become risk averse and the consumer spending goes down. So apart from some of the industries which are seeing high demand because of shift of demand to online, most of the industries are seeing a slump in demand. It's also a tough time for a brand marketer because again, people who are into brand marketing who are trying to run digital campaigns for brand marketing, the whole mind space is so much hacked by this current and ongoing pandemic that any communication finds it very difficult to break through. So the for to achieve the same kind of impact, probably it will take much more advertising money and many more slots compared to what it would have done a few months ago or when things were normal. So yeah, this is a challenging quarter in my opinion with someone, but yeah, for everyone. But at the same time, I think people are collaborating and we are all coming out strong out of it.
Absolutely. Some very interesting points in there. It's interesting to hear the challenges of not only, demand side, but the supply side. And also a lot of companies, as you mentioned, are facing a lot of pressure when it comes to increasing conversions in sales, particularly when the economy is down and a lot of industry has been hardly hit. So I think that is a very good point you brought up. I'd love to hear from Ratnesh as well. If some of your clients have faced similar challenges this quarter or recently.
No, absolutely. I think Ravish, and as he rightly said, we're in the middle of a unseen crisis. None of the corporates, I would say, no, nobody was prepared for the same. I believe last year when it did hit, organizations actually woke up and started seriously looking at. So there were organizations who had basically started looking at the digital side. But I believe the pandemic kind of propelled that because end of the day it was lockdown, there were no physical movements, there were no physical visits. What do you do? It did propel, and I believe we're going through a second wave. Organizations are more mature. Everybody put in a process, everybody put in a task force. I think the disruptions are a bit lower, at least on the normal business or supply chain of the sites. Yeah, there's always a human factor. Organizations are also believe are more sensitive right now. So from a messaging perspective, Ravish is right. You can't be basically putting in a kind of a sell messaging right now, right? We're seeing support, empathy coming in, solidarity of pain with the common people or with their customers. So yes, I think there is a sensitivity around the messaging. There is a focus towards whether we want to sell, because I think organizations are fundamentally meant to run this whole PNL engine. So they're supposed to sell, but the empathy is coming in, solidarity is coming in. And I believe the processes are now set. So that engine is running. So move from advertising towards shifting towards digital marketing. It's good in a way for marketers. It's a good in a way for digital transformation or leap from whatever level last year organizations were, but it's coming with a lot of responsibility.
Very, very interesting. You talked about some of the challenges, and I think those are universal that you bring up. And I think it's a balancing act for a lot of marketers, as you talked about. How do you sell during this time, as Ravish has mentioned? How do you increase sales conversions at a time where you can't be hard selling because a lot of organizations have been hard, whether it's on the professional side or even personally. So how do you sell? How do you build relationships with empathy? I think is one of the key messages I took away from your message right now. Let's switch back to Ravish here for a minute because I am a big fan of your LinkedIn content. I think you have some very interesting takes on things. You take a very strong stance. So I'd love to hear from your point of view, what is a commonly held belief in your industry that you passionately disagree?
So this basically comes from how all of us digital marketers have grown over the years. And this is a classic case of where technology outpaces our ways of thinking. So when digital marketing was new, or when it was a wild west world out there, people were trying to use the hacks, or people were trying to optimize things manually, and everyone basically believed they had a secret source of conversion, or they had a secret source in which they would run campaigns for maximizing ROI. Now, with time, over past 5-7 years, what has happened? Now, all the platforms, to certain extent, even Twitter, LinkedIn, all of them have come up with their algorithmic solutions. And these are wonderful tools, but I still see a lot of resistance in the industry, especially among digital marketers who have been practicing this for a while, in adopting these. And this is because people at times do confuse activity for productivity. They think that, yeah, I need to make 10 changes in the campaign daily. I need to keep adjusting the bids, budgets to extract that last bit of ROI from it. But the way things are set now, the kind of maturity these algorithms, these AI/ML platforms have now, ensures that the best way of extracting ROI is actually tell them what you are gunning for, tell them at what cost you are comfortable getting them, and then let the algorithm train. Also, the way AI/ML works is basically whenever there is a clear set of parameters and whenever there is a clear output, then these algorithms are able to optimize for it in much better ways. Second, even if you look at the kind of data availability, the data availability which Google algorithm will have, as a digital marketer, you won't even know those parameters. It can be thousands of factors which the algorithm will take into account before deciding whether or not to serve an impression to someone and at what cost. It is humanly just not possible to do it. So I strongly believe that our job, and it's time when digital marketers started giving more importance to that marketing word in their designation, and return back to the basics of marketing, where they started thinking more in terms of the consumers cohorts, more in terms of the communication, the messaging, how to optimize the creative, rather than just thinking in terms of technical optimization. Another place where I've seen this behavior a lot is in SEO, because again, search engine optimization started quite, I think Google came up in 98 or 2000, if I remember correctly. And after that, it was a wild west world where everyone soon discovered that by doing huge amount of backlinks, directory listings, and then doing a lot of keyword stuffing, you could come up in ranks. But Google folks also figured it out quickly, released Penguin, Panda, RankPaid, all those updates. And now I can say that the algorithm can read a web page almost as well as a human being. It not only understands the text written there, but it also understands the context. It also understands what it means. It understands it to an extent that when you type a problem in, or when you type a question in Google, it is actually able to extract the answer from some obscure web page and present it to you. And that's where we have seen a rise in zero click searches. So there also you can see the algorithm is able to do all that optimization reading, and it has become really hard to use those hacks which were working at some point in time. So somewhere there also the marketers, or especially digital marketers, will have to move away from the hack or optimization thinking and move more towards content. They start thinking in terms of consumers, start thinking in terms of how can I create something meaningful for the consumer, or how can I communicate the USP of my organization in the best possible way? So I think that's one thing which I passionately disagree with, that our digital marketer's job is to keep optimizing the campaigns or keep executing the campaigns. And there is a secret sauce which everyone has, using which they can drive a differential ROI. The long-term differential ROI is going to come from following the basics of marketing, which is you need to understand your proposition, you need to understand the consumer needs well, and you need to bridge that with the right kind of communication, messaging, and creatives.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I was lighting up whenever you're talking about content. I'm a content guy. And you bring up some very, very interesting points. I love the analogy of the difference between activity versus productivity. You talked about a lot of marketers are doing these technical optimizations, these quick hacks, trying to get the secret sauce and figure everything as quickly as possible. But to your point, a lot of them are really forgetting the basics in which you just talked about, focusing on the consumer cohorts, the messaging, making sure that is well done before you start focusing on the optimization, which I think a lot of marketers, especially the technical side, really get excited about. But then they forget about, like I said, focusing on the consumers as well as the messaging, making sure that's clear and to the point. So very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Rajneesh, I'd love to get your thoughts if you see similar kind of perception in your space as well too.
No, absolutely. See, I believe I'll break the digital marketer journey into two parts. The first part is obviously use all these big guys, the engines, to bring this unknown guy to your real, which is to your digital assets. In some cases in India, it's also to make sure they visit your physical stores. But I think from there on, and I think as Rish said, there's a lot of maturity in coming in that point of time. Yes, you could always do optimizations. You could always find the right segments to target, which is important. You're not splashing. But I think the maturity is quite high on that side. I think the real challenge now starts in second phase, which is the engagement, right? You landed on your real estate, which is how do you basically engage now the customer? How do you personalize the content? Or how does and then lot of purchases, lot of product categories are still a considerate purchase. It's not that the person will probably make the purchase on the first one. In fact, if you look at some of the categories like automobile, it is like a real researched one. There's a BCG report which says by the time actually customer lands onto your page, there's a 60 to 70% research that customer has done. Most likely he knows which brand he's going after, and in some cases he also knows which SKU is going after, which color, which model, and all that. Just an example. I think there now you have to go back to the actual marketing. What is the messaging? How are you nurturing this customer? The customer probably will come in, go back, you know, close the browser, done. How do you bring this customer back? How do you engage with them? Can you engage with them real time? There are certain things which you probably may need to look at real time, reaching out to a customer, or you may lose it, right? Ordering a cab or ordering a food at 12:30 p.m. decisions. If he's not interested, he'd probably go and search for the supply chain and availability and all those things consideration. So there I totally agree with Ravish. I think you back to marketing, personalizations, content, relevant content, nurturing this customer to the ultimate purchase. I think we have to get that messaging very clear. What does this brand means to this customer, and how I am engaging him or her so that they end up our customer.
Absolutely. Sounds like there's a lot of parallels between both your guys' point of views. And Ranish brings up some very good points in terms of importance of engagement. Once someone actually lands on your real estate, your website, your mobile app, how are you personalizing the content? How are you nurturing that relationship? It goes back to what Ravish was mentioning earlier in terms of a lot of marketers are really focusing on how do you improve conversions. And that is where this piece really comes into play and how it has a big impact on sales. Ranish, thank you so much for bringing that up. Ravish, I want to get your thoughts because you were talking about digital technologies earlier. I'd love to hear about maybe some of the resources, tools, or channels that you guys are using that you think a lot of people aren't fully leveraging yet.
I wouldn't say there is a very specific tool, because the mix of tools which we use I mean, the very usual set of digital marketing tools where we leverage the Google, Facebook, and different advertising platforms for top of the funnel. We have Point Gauge as our stack for the middle of the funnel customers who interact with our website. And then we use the remarket campaigns. And then there is a data layer below that. And we do a lot of data cleansing. But more than that, what I feel that the resource or the tool which people are failing to use today in a lot of organization, it's not because of they are not acquiring these tools, but they're not using is the automation and the reporting capabilities in most of these tools, be it Data Studio, be it Tableau, it can be your choice. But in a lot of organizations, and I'm not saying everyone, I see a lot of practice of where someone will collect the report and send it to someone. It really irritates me because now practically every tool has APIs or every platform has APIs. Every platform plays nicely with one another, and technology has matured so much that from CEO to an analyst, everyone can have view of the same data. Of course, filtered and collated in a different way basis the use case, because the CEO will need a much more strategic view. An analyst or a campaign or someone who is executing the campaign will need a much more granular view using which they can take their decisions. But on the other hand, what is frustrating to see is that people are spending a good part of their day on collating this data and trying to analyze it, or trying to send reports from one person to another. Why this is also wasteful is because I am a strong believer that people should never waste their time extracting or submitting reports, but they should spend their time analyzing that and trying to draw insights from it. So I think that's one aspect. The data reporting and data pipelining capabilities are something which I've seen most organizations are not doing in the best possible way, which is leading to a lot of rework and a lot of man hours wastage across all.
Absolutely. It goes back to what you're talking about earlier, activity versus productivity. How can you really leverage automation? How can you take a look at these reports and analytics and making sure that you're fully leveraging them rather than just doing busy work? And I'm so glad we have an expert on joining us. Ratnesh, I would love to hear your thoughts on what are some of your ways in which your clients are leveraging automation as well as the reporting and analytics functions of those tools.
Yeah, absolutely. See, Ravish pointed out a very important point. There are two facets again. I love these two facets. Sorry. The first one is getting the data. First is the challenges of getting all the data together. And organizations, the- again, Ola is probably a very mature organization from a data perspective. There are certain organizations who are still struggling to get that entire data set in together. Now, some of the trends which are happening from the data sets collation perspective, what we are seeing is today the convergence of first party data and MarTech data, because today that static customer data and the transaction data is not enough to probably create insights. So what we are seeing today, customers trying to build what is traditionally called the CDP now, customer data platforms, is real life, where the behavioral data of the customer is being merged with the first party data of the customers which are coming in, because that gives a very strong set of data sets to play on. The second one, what we are also seeing here is there's a lot of time which is happening and organizations are realizing, right? So you have a data, then you're analyzing, you have a whole set of data scientists who are building these tools and AI or algorithms to create insights out of it. Then these insights become a part of what is called a segmentation, right? You creating segments based on certain calculated ROIs or parameters or things which you want to achieve in your organizations. Then these segmentation engines needs to talk to an orchestration engine, which is basically send out a plan. It could be a cross channel, it could be a single channel orchestration, mails, SMS, and all that. Lot of time goes, and organizations are realizing that this whole cycle sometimes takes days, right? To create a meaningful campaign out of an insight which got created out of a data which got assembled into a report, it takes time. And organizations, I think, especially the ones who are higher on the maturity side of this, are now trying to bring it that how can this whole magic happen very quickly? How can we do real time activations of a campaign where the segment gets auto created based on an action which happened on a website or a mobile app, and bring those certain set of customers together, create that the segment gets created, the calculated variables get thing, orchestration engine kicks in, and it is a, and it's happening. And before you realize, in 3 or 5 minutes, a customer who has done certain action on one of your estate is actually seeing a reaction by the organization or a turnaround by the action. That's the power of analytics, segmentation, data all coming together. And we're seeing everybody, not even, and across the industry. I'm seeing retail, I'm seeing telecom, I'm seeing banking, financial services, heavily investing into these kind of what you call intelligence platforms, not the traditional data warehouse or analytics platform.
Very interesting, Ramesh. You were talking about processes earlier, and I think you beautifully summed up the entire process when it comes to behavioral data, insight, segmentation, orchestration. So thank you so much for that. Next, I would be remiss of me because Ola is obviously a market leader, and Ravish, I know a lot of people watching, listening to this want to know, what are you guys doing? What are you guys up to? We don't want to give away everything, but I'd love to hear what's something you tried recently in your company that you were really surprised by the result.
Yeah. So something we did, and we were like really surprised by the result in a very positive way. It was at my previous organization, Misho, and we really questioned a widely held industry bidding, and we got very positive results out of it. And it was because in our industry, and especially in India, most of the times influencers are used for driving brand marketing goals, and they give a lot of value there because again they have certain set of followers, they drive a certain kind of positioning, they and their content is engaging. So when the brand is presented in that way, the recall and everything is very high. Recall, the impact, everything goes very high. But at the same time, at Misho, we looked at the influencer marketing program and said and asked that can we take it to next level, and can we really leverage it as a performance marketing channel. And that's where we started talking with our influencers, and we started developing the custom links for every video which was going live, and scaled up the whole influencer program in terms of videos going live by around 7x over 3 4 months. And when I say 7x, it was going in somewhere in higher 2 digits, and to which it went to almost 500 plus kind of videos. After doing this, and also at the same time, what we did is for every video that went live, since we had complete view of the funnel of how many views, how many clicks it was generating, and what kind of conversion it had on our platform, we have really set up that data pipeline well. We could actually find out trends, that what are the kind of videos or what kind of best practices actually work well. Should we do a 2 minute video or a 20-minute video? When should the brand step in? What kind of reviews? What should be the tonality? So with all those analysis, we could really come up with a playbook, which then again is help us scale it up even further. So that was a very positive result, because a lot of scale up which happened at my previous organization was driven by this channel. And another byproduct, and it was a learning for me also, was that when we scaled up the influencer channel on YouTube, it really helped our Google campaigns perform better. Why? Because again, the algorithm came into picture, and it was able to figure out that people who were watching these videos were good top of the funnel audience for the Google campaign. And we did enough analysis, because it did sound too good to it. But there was a huge rub-off effect on set of performing influencer videos going live, and at the same time, Google picking up that signal and spread and scaling up the spend on YouTube and driving efficiencies for that. So this was something which really surprised us with the result, both in terms of the directly attributed results and also the kind of rub-off effect it had on other channels. I think any channel which any digital marketer has in his portfolio, one suggestion will be to always start looking at it in terms of output or objective it's driving, and always be open to experiment and learn.
Very interesting approach. Something that I haven't heard when it comes to influencer marketing. He talks about leveraging influencer marketing from a performance marketing point of view, seeing what works, looking at the analytics, building those playbooks, and then scaling it from there. So it's a very unique approach. I knew you'd have something that would wow me, and I think that is something that I hadn't heard about yet. So I love that you always have a different approach or a different take to marketing. So thanks so much for sharing that. Ranish, over to you, my friend. What are some of the interesting things you are seeing with some of your clients or in your space?
This is something very interesting. I can't share the name of the customer, but it's an automobile customer. And this is a real incident of how digital marketing actually overturned the entire signals which this organization is running. Long story short, this company had launched a variant, a model sometime last year. And all the results, including they splashed, it is a big global brand. They launched the product 5 to 6 months down the line. The entire industry basically categorized it as a failure. The dealers told them there's no demand of this product. People have come in, but they are not buying. Uh, they basically, when they were running some of the digital, they suddenly realized some of the signals which they started getting from digital side of things, that there is a latent demand of this product, actually, which was actually contrary to everything which they had heard on the physical side of things and the dealer side of the things. The inventory was not moving. And then they said, let's give it a try. And they started a nurture digitally and relaunched the brand only in digital side of things. It did not do anything on the physical side of things. And very surprisingly, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, they actually, the query started handling. The dealer started calling them and said, we are getting calls about this product. Do you guys have an inventory of this? What can we do about it? They actually were able to turn around a failed launch as perceived, just because the digital signals told them that there's a lot of customers who are actually reading about this content, reading about this car, putting positive reviews because it's a global brand and it was launched in some other parts of the world, and they are intermixing with them. They're reading about that. They're starting to inquiry. And then they went back to the basics. They launched a pure digital marketing campaign, and it started back and it actually got revived. The brand actually got revived. So can't tell you the name of the thing, but believe me, that customer totally now believes in this concept of digital marketing and how it can turn around because they've actually seen it.
I was gonna say, what an amazing turnaround story from, like you said, a something that was considered a failure to getting inquiries 3 to 4 weeks down the road. And it was interesting to hear about on demand right on the spot versus latent demand. And you bring up an interesting point. If it is a high ticket item, a lot of times you're doing research, you're looking at customer reviews, you're talking to friends to find out more information about it. So very interesting story. I really appreciate you sharing that as well.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, yes.
Just want to say that they pulled the plug based on the traditional marketing and the advertising and the in-paper news, everything, or what they were promoting at the dealership points. I think all those signals probably got proved wrong. So, which reiterates back to, I think, a point which mentioned and by reports which confirm that a lot of these customers today are in that whole research mode, and by the time they are actually landing up at a brand's place, they more or less are sure they've done a lot of research. So a lot of, I think, needs to be spent basically on this whole part of influencing research, all these things which will basically perceive the customer how your brand is. And then when they start looking, actually doing the transaction or engagement of a buy process, the part before that is as critical.
Absolutely. And I think that circles back to what we were talking about earlier in terms of the importance of content, using content to influence the customer, particularly if it is a large ticket item that requires a lot of research. And you bring up some very good examples. Anish, thank you so much for sharing that story. Everyone watching, everyone listening, please be safe, take care, and we'll see you soon in the next episode of B2B Brew.